curious, how did you tear your lumbrical on a casual after-work climb? What happened?
It ended up being quite an interesting, this will get really geeky, but it's quite an interesting dive into it. And I'll start by giving full props to Paul Huffey. He's called The Climbing Physio on Instagram, and he's the most knowledgeable person I've ever met to do with fingers, injuries, performance in the hand. It came from an underlying issue of I have quite stiff joints in my fingers now from loading for a lot of time, particularly in the dip joints, so the furthest joint away from your palm in my ring fingers. You could probably see on the screen, like, I can't close them. You know, like if you tried to close your fingers like this, I can't fully flex them. And one thing that we realized was, because of this lack of flexion in that dip joint, if you imagine like you're hanging onto a pocket or you're hanging onto a hold with just your tips, if that joint doesn't flex at all, it's kind of like not really hanging on the edge. It's kind of pushing against it. So if you're trying to hang just the last joint of your finger over an edge, and hopefully you'll be able to see it if anyone watches this, your finger will bend onto that edge and it'll hang underneath it. And if your finger doesn't bend, as you can see my ring finger doesn't now, it won't hang as much.
It doesn't go all the way straight.
So what you end up doing is you end up kind of pushing with your lumbrical. Your whole hand is trying to close onto that edge. So your hand starts to do more and more of the work, but your forearm can't actually work because the tendon won't work properly.
Are you like actively working on stretching your fingers and working on the joint mobility? How are you going about that?
So I'm definitely working on the joint mobility just by literally curling your finger over and squeezing your fingernail with your thumb and the back of your finger with your forefinger, just trying to create as much flexion there as possible. And I've already seen massive gains in that. And then I'm also stretching the lumbrical. So a good way of stretching a lumbrical is if you curl one of your fingers round fully, and I don't know if you've gone through this before, and then pinch your finger in that sort of flex position. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one, but you're pretty much curling your finger over and pushing on the back knuckle of your hand. And what that does is it takes the stretch out the tendon and it places it all in the hand. And then you slowly straighten your arm and you'll just feel it. If you've got tight lumbricals and tight palms, you'll feel it all the way through your palm. And it's that kind of really nice, dull, achy kind of stretch. And it's made my hands feel much, much better, actually. And then lastly, it's just doing mono lifts with just one pad. So particularly on my ring finger that's injured at the moment. And that just forces the flexion and forces it to get stronger with the other fingers curled up. Gone from sort of mono lifting like 2 kilos on that injured ring finger with fingers not really flexing properly to sort of like 20 kilos now at the moment. And just I'm going to keep pushing that to make it really robust.